Hey, good morning. I was on right at 10 and Facebook, it's giving me that havoc again, telling me that it is unhappy with my connection. So I actually just turned my phone off and reloaded it, and I'm praying that it will have a better signal. It already seems to be doing so much better. So hopefully we'll have a good experience this morning. Oh, technology is so annoying sometimes, but it's also great. We have more amazing sewing machines than we've ever had before. Let me show you where we're going right now. Notice I have pink, very pink in there, super bright. On this, it's really going to show up. So this is a very bright green on the top. So tension is this tug of war or struggle between the top and the bottom threads. And I know that it is next to stitch length control. It's probably the biggest issue that most quilters have. Everybody has it, even me, even professional quilters have that. So I mean, I've never seen anybody who is like, it's magic and they never have an issue. But if you know more about it and how to handle it, it'll get a little bit easier. So the first thing is when I thread, which I just did, I'm going to put my foot and have the thread go through it. If your thread is up on top right here, what you can do is just first take one stitch and then pull this out, and it'll actually pull your thread underneath your foot. So you don't have to thread it through there or anything like that. Super easy, just do that. And one stitch will also let us pick up our bobbin thread. So I'll just do it up here. I kind of made this space so we can mark off different tension amounts so we can check it out and compare. So I'm going to pull up my bobbin thread. Okay, there it is right there. You can see it's obviously pink, very pink. And I'll just put my needle right down in the center. On this foot, there's a little red line right in the center. Let's see if we can get in a little tighter. And then the needle is right in the center of that, so I can use that as my visual marker right there. Also, I am using my straight stitch throat plate, right? So this is my zigzag. You can see it's got a nice big opening right there. The one that I have now has a center and a left and right hole. So the needle is supported all around wherever it's penetrating. So if this is the hole now, the single hole, and the needle goes down, the fabric here has support underneath it as the needle is going through that fabric. So I do recommend, if you can, always use the straight stitch plate if it's possible. Sometimes it isn't, and I understand that, but that will help with better stitch appearance. So it says, a couple people said their sound is bad. Can anybody else give some feedback? Is it bad for everybody or just for one or two people? Sound is good for you. Okay, so it's not universal. So then that probably means it's not me. Anyway, I'm sorry about that. I hope it will get better. Let's sew. Right now, I have my tension set on 4. 4 is the middle setting for my tension. So my tension goes from 0, I think, up to 8 or 9, somewhere up there. So right now, mine is in the middle. I've got these threads right here. When I start out, I'll do some of that micro tacking and just do a few stitches. This type of foot is called a darning foot or a free motion foot. Okay? And what it does is every time you stitch, you can see that the bar right here is pulled up. Every time this touches here, it lifts this up a little bit and releases pressure on the spring. And that means that I can move more freely. Okay? So compared to a ruler foot or a free floating foot, I have to push harder with this because that doesn't have as much room in between for that fabric. So especially if I have thicker batting, then I'm going to have to push the fabric a little bit harder. So let's see where we're at. Let's go ahead and cut it, and I'll bring it up so you can see it more closely. Okay, so what do you see right now? The pink is the bobbin thread, and clearly I see a lot of pink coming up onto the top. What this is telling me is that the the green thread, that top tension is yanking really hard. It's pulling that pink all the way up to the top. So how would I fix this if I'm trying to make my tension better? The first thing I would do is I need to lower my top tension. Okay, can you see it up close? You can see all that pink in there. So I want to lower that tension down. I'm going to take my 4 and I'll move it down about to 3.4, give or take. Okay, now let's do it in the next section and we'll compare it there and see what happens. So when the bobbin is being pulled up to the top, that is a sign that your top tension is working too hard. Okay, so let's try it again. Does my speed matter? Speed does affect your tension some, but it's mostly about the pressure on the thread. Okay, as long as I'm moving slowly, smoothly, evenly, then I shouldn't be having any problem. So we'll give a nice good test here. I can tell you, I think it looks pretty nice to me, but I'm not up super close. When we actually get onto the camera, I think it magnifies. So that first one on the camera, I think it looked really bad, but up close and personal, it actually looks fine. Okay, so let's see what's happening. Well, what do you think? That looks a lot better to me, I think. Right? Okay, so it might be good. Let's find out. How do we know if it's all the way good? Okay, this is the top, right? And let's go the other side. Oh, not good. Not looking very good. So we've made some adjustments maybe, but now the top isn't pulling up enough. Oh, I got a loose thread in there. Let me just cut that real quick. There we go. Get that out of there. And look at it this way, right? I'm telling you, the camera kind of like magnifies it to the nth level, right? Really microscopically. But when I just look at it like this, it actually looks really not bad at all. So I'll go ahead and make some adjustments. So we maybe went down a little too much. We didn't get the good balance that we want to have. All right, so let's just go to the next section. And I'll bring it back up. We'll kind of get in the middle a little bit. We're at 3.8. Okay, so we're kind of right in that sweet spot, I think. What happens if you've tried everything? What happens if I've made it lower, I've made it higher, I've done this adjustment, I've done that adjustment? There's a couple of things. The first is that if I'm using a fabric like this that's super dark and I'm using threads that really, really show like this, it's much more difficult to get your tension balance to be that perfect balance that you want to have. Okay, it is. I don't care who you are. It's just harder. Okay, you're having more contrast, so the visibility of any challenging areas is going to show up more. So you can use a color that is not quite as much of a challenge, and that'll make it easier for you to get that balance. The other thing is, don't use two different colors, right? Diane, you're right. Di Warner, she's like, perhaps a thread change. Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So right now we have two different colors to try to really emphasize the balance between those two. So what do you think now? Does that look pretty good? I think the top looks awesome, actually. For me, if I'm looking, I can't really see much of that pink at all. I think that this is sort of magnifying the whole a little bit, but when I look at it straight on, I don't see any pink on this blue. So let's go ahead and cut to the back and see what we see. Oh, looks good to me. It's got some chalk on there. That's why it looks so mushy. But look it looks good, right? It looks pretty good. Can I micro in there? And, I could. That's what they do at this shop. They try to look at it like super close like that. But the truth is, I can't see that at all. When I just hold it regular, normal, non-microscopic, it looks totally perfectly pink, right? So that's also something to consider, that, you know, we're not going to be looking at it with it this far away from our eyes, okay? Karen, some of the ladies are sending stars. It's like a penny a view or something like that. When they send, you know, it's each star is a penny. So they're supporting me. So thank you for that. I appreciate you guys for doing that. That's very kind. I appreciate it. It's not expected, but always grateful. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's go the other way. What we did is we found this nice balance right here. So I think this would be good. I would be happy to quilt with this. This would not make me uncomfortable. I think that the physical look of it, when I look at it, it actually looks great on the blue, and it looks really good on this side as well. So if I was going to use two different colors, I would be fine with that. The other thing that you can do is, if you use a color that is, number one, the same on both sides, you are not going to see this pull up very much, right? Like the pink, I think, really emphasizes itself because of the contrast. But if I had, you know, like a deep purple like this or a dark blue, then you would be able to, even if you had a little pull up, it would be better camouflaged. What is the other thing that we can do? So this batting, let me just scoot this over. This is a very, very thin batting. Like if I actually held it up to the light, let me show you. Ooh, you can kind of see through it. You see that? Like there's my hand under there. Right? If I use batting that is so ultra thin like that, well, guess what? That means that there's nowhere for your little knot to hide very well. So if I'm using super, super thin batting, I might want to use a lot thinner thread. This is 40 weight. Both of these are 40 weight. So if I'm using an ultra thin batting, maybe I need to use a 60 weight thread or 100 weight or an 80 weight, something finer, so that the knot is much smaller and it can hide more easily in this batting. Thicker batting is going to hide much better. So if I had a quilt that had black on the back and white on the front, and I really needed to use two different colors, I want to make sure that my batting is sturdy enough that it can hide that knot much better. So for example, Quilter's Dream Request Loft is a much thicker batting than just using this. Let's see if I have some right here. I think I do. I'm trying to see if any's close by. Hang on, let me grab some. Oh, it's not convenient, but I have it. Hang on just a second. Okay, here we go. Okay, this is the Quilter's Dream. This is like not the regular loft and not the fattest loft, right? Let me hold it so you can see. Okay, and it feels like it's hefty, solid. And if you can see right there, like if the light goes through it, let's see if I can hold it up at the top to make that better. Can't really see my fingers through it. I mean, you could see a little shadow right there, but you can't see through that like we could with the other one. So that's the Quilter's Request Loft. And then let's see, this one's kind of in the middle. This is Warm and White. Okay, so Warm and White is good if I'm using something that has a heavy white and I don't want to put a yellow batting. A natural colored batting would show up as yellow. So if you're doing something that has predominantly white, I recommend using this white batting, some kind of white batting. So this is Warm and White. So this one is definitely thinner than the Quilter's Dream Request Loft. You can see it is a little finer, but it still is quite sturdy and like it's not gonna pull apart or anything like that. This is a sturdy batting. Whereas this one that I've got on here, let me just show you. If I pulled on this, it's just gonna Like it's going to come right apart. So your batting does make a big difference, right? We shouldn't be, I'm going to try and put it in a nice way. Like, I understand we all have to be cost effective. We can't always have the best of most expensive of everything. Like I might like to use silk batting, right? Or bamboo batting or wool batting or whatever. But $120 for a king size batting, that's a little bit expensive, it can kind of bump it up. But let's say I worked on this quilt for 2 years, right? It's got hundreds of pieces and thousands of hours of my time. Well, then is $100 for a good batting really that much? So what I'm telling you is, don't be skimpy. Use good choices based on it. If it's a baby quilt, fine. Put some polyester on there. It's going to be washed a billion times. And it's going to be spit on and drug around. And it probably won't last until they're 25. And if it did, that's a sad thing, right? We want it to be loved and abused. But if you're making the most heirloom quilt for your wedding or somebody's, a present, then treat it like that. And you will also find that it will respect you better. You will have a better experience as you quilt it. Okay, so here's my last thing I'm going to talk about. So, we've adjusted this. We think it's good. So let's do some little quick testing. There's a few things I like to try when I'm working on picking my perfect perfect tension test. Okay, if I go in a circle, so just make some loops. This is where, if the tension is bad, we're going to see eyelashing and other problems, right? Because with the circle, you're going more quickly changing directions than you are any other time. Like if you're doing some kind of loop-de-loop, we're changing our directions pretty dramatically. And then the other test that I like is I like the V. Okay. Actively changing directions with a very determined direction like that. Not just being like whatever, but I'm choosing to go a direction, trying to get this very sharp point right there. So right here, if your tension is off, typically if it's too high, it's going to drag your bobbin so you get this little pink notch right up here. So this is with our good setting, okay, which we think is pretty reasonable. So I'm just going to put the tension way up high. Since we did it low and we already saw what happened, I'm going to put it up high up here. We'll do it on this little section. And right now, 3.8, I'm going to put it up to, 5.5, 6.5. So we know that that's too high, okay, because we already had it set very well. So now it's going to probably be much higher. Let's see what happens. This will be our last little test that we'll do. We'll do the same test. We'll do some of these little loop-de-loops. So I can see the little pink dots. Can you see them? They're really obvious, I think. All right, so let's cut that. So that's with it up way high, okay? So we started at 4, and that wasn't perfect, but it was close. But this is what's happening now when it's way high, especially on the V. You really can see that. And then you can see there's a lot of pink on there, okay? So now let's bring it down much too low. So like we'll go down to maybe 2. And let's see what happens with 2. Because we were at 3.8 for the good batting, for the good tension. Now, I'm going to cut some threads before we do any more because I don't want to get trapped. I got a lot of little threads hanging out here. I don't like to leave threads on unless I'm, just underneath a ruler or something like that. I like to get them out of the way soon so they don't wrap around my foot. Okay, so we have, I think, 1 or 2 little spaces left to play with, and we'll do one last test. Okay. So we've got this area right here. I'll kind of scoot it out just a little bit so you can get a little better view. And we've set that tension now to 2. So I'm going to just work in this area right here. Okay, always still using the good practices, always picking up our thread, and here we go. So I'll just start tacking slowly, get that tacked in. I think it looks great. What do you think? This is a quiz, a trick. Okay, so I'm using my fingers to help move me around, keeping my hands nice and flat. Notice that my rhythm is nice and even. I can go faster, but I try to keep that nice same sound. So on the back, not looking so awesome. Let's get in close, right? So what's happening is the top isn't working hard enough. We lowered it down very, very low, and we're getting these really obvious top thread. And more than that, let me show you this part. I can basically just lift this stitch almost up, right? It's so loose that I can basically pick it up. And this is where it's almost like a baste. It's so loose that you could just get underneath there and just pull on that and pull all those stitches out pretty much. See, like it's just really loose. So that's something that isn't secure. It's not going to do a good job. It looks great here on the top because the top has all of the power, right? It did, you know, it's not even doing anything. It's not doing any work right there. Can you see that? How loose that stitch is right there? Okay, so this was 2, and then let's do our little loop again and see what happens when it's really low. I'll actually even lower it just a little bit more to make it obvious. So we'll do our little loop-de-loops. And then we'll do our same thing, our little V. So this is my common test that I use whenever I'm trying to adjust my tension. I do these loop-de-loops and the little V. So we'll just scoot out over here. Okay, so it's this section right here. Let's scoot us in a little bit. We're a little far out. Okay. All right, so this is the section we just sewed. This little loop-de-loop right here and this little V. And this is at tension 1.4, so very, very low. Okay. So you can see this is what's happening, right? The top is not pulling up this knot. And the knot itself, the whole entanglement between the top and the bottom, is just super loose. And we're not really getting too much eyelashing, but we are getting a very loose stitch right here as we go around. And you can see like the dots here are closer together than they are when we're generally stitching. So this is where you really see it. And that's because you're changing direction. So there's more stress on the stitch around the loop than there is just on that gentle curve. Okay, so this is what it looks like on the bottom if your top tension is not working hard enough. So let's talk about one last thing and then we'll be done for the day. So many machines come with a looser bobbin tension. I even have that for several machines. I have not found it necessary to use that very often. I have been able to comfortably make an adjustment with the existing top thread. I do not change the bobbin tension. I don't go in there with my screwdriver and mess with that because it is preset for general sewing. And if I mess with my bobbin, then I can just wreak havoc with all my sewing, and I don't want to do that. So if you find that your regular bobbin cannot accommodate giving you the best tension, Teresa, I'll answer your question in just a second. I'm going to continue just with my thought on the bobbin. So there's different bobbin cases. So I'm going to just lock my machine and I'll lift this up real quick. I'll show you two things. This is my straight stitch plate. You can see I've got a left and right needle position and the center. So this is the straight stitch plate. And then the bobbin case itself is what I'm talking about. It's this piece right here. So I'm not going to use a different one unless I absolutely cannot make this work. You should feel that you are able to adjust your top tension on most machines. Machines these days are designed for that, and you shouldn't feel uncomfortable doing that. It's not unusual that you would have to. So don't just put your thread on and be like, oh, my tension's bad. Fix it. Try to fix it. Lower it down, raise it up. If you have a default setting, then you can easily get back to your standard. If you don't have that, then you can go ahead and put a little mark on your tension device, just a little sticker or anything. You can wipe it off later, but something that you know where your standard setting is. And then you adjust up and you adjust down to fix the problems that we just saw. So then if you've done all of those things and you've checked that you actually have tension, when you pull on this, you should definitely feel some resistance when the foot is down. Okay, so now it's down. Oh, it's because we have that tension up, and this is at 1.4 and I still have to pull on it. So you should always have this top thread giving you some resistance, and you can check your bobbin just the same way. When the bobbin is in there, if we don't have it properly in all the way, hold this and then do your wrap. I don't usually cut mine because I want a long tail, but let's pick it up through the top and then we'll just show you what that tension should look like as well. Okay, I can take this and just floss it through there like that. And here's my bobbin. And when I pull on this, it shouldn't just go zoom out of there. You should have just a little bit of tension on that where you have to actually pull on it. If you don't, that's a sign that those two things may not be threaded properly. And I would go back and check those first before I make any adjustments to tension. Both of those need to be done properly, or you will never be able to tell if your tension is correct or not. Okay, so that's it. That's my lesson. It's supposed to be quick, but it never is, right? So 29 minutes later. I hope you guys have an awesome day. Happy quilting. Go play. Have a good time. Remember that if you're tired and you're feeling frustrated, just take a break, right? It's better to quilt when you're happy and feeling good, and then it looks better and you're happier. Have a great weekend, you guys. I will be planning for my Tile Titans the third Sunday of the month, and I'm planning for that on Sunday, so I will see you then. Take care. Bye-bye.